am J.J. Dixon with the Jacksonville Brotherhood of Police Officers, and we are continuing on with our Black History Month series. And today I'm very excited because we are going to feature some former SROs from the city of Jacksonville. So before we get started, I have to acknowledge a couple of things. First, we have 3 individuals who would have loved to be here today but could not. Jocelyn Wells, who is a former SRO, Janetta Buxton, who is also a former SRO, and Olivia Harris, who is a recent former SRO who absolutely loved the students at Terry Parker. So we wanted to acknowledge them, say that we miss you and thank you for your service. Secondly, we are honored and privileged to be able to film today in the Arlington area of Jacksonville, and we have, this will be the only time I say it, don't get mad, Bishop Richardson here with us, who was gracious enough to allow us to use his facility. So I'm going to ask for something that we haven't done during the series up until now. I have been the host. So today I would like to ask Officer Bishop Richardson if you will be the co-host with me today, since you have your co-host microphone on anyway.
All right, I certainly will.
Thank you. So we will guide the conversation. Thank you so much. I believe we have another officer that's arrived, and some will be arriving. So as they arrive, please allow them to come on the stage where we are. It's not going to interrupt anything. Before we get started with the conversation this morning, I would like to take a moment to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves and tell either what school or what grade level they work with. Just to be clear, we have school resource officers, their officers, grade officers, and school board detectives here as well. If I missed anybody, please charge it to my head and not my heart. Again, I am J.J. Dixon. I was a school resource officer from 2000 to 2010 at the middle school level in the same middle school, and that would be Lakeshore Middle.
My name is Terrence Hightower. Filled in during the summers at William M. Raines for Officer Henry Williams when he wasn't there. Did it for 2 summers. Had experience for 2 years. Pretty much it.
Retired Officer Latoyle Faust. I was a DARE officer, Drug Abuse Resistance Education. I had the privilege of teaching at approximately 15 different schools, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I also was a member of what they then called Shoot Baskets Not Brothers program when it was all male. It transitioned over to Summer Youth Intervention Program, which started out as male, and then some of the female officers were like, you know, there's troubled girls out there that need assistance as well. And so we started the female branch of Summer Youth Intervention Program.
While you're passing the mic, I just want to add that we have already done a series on the Summer Youth Intervention, the Shoot Baskets Not Brothers program, and we talked about the Summer Youth Intervention program. So I'm glad you brought that up, just to verify that that program actually existed and that we did have good officers that worked it.
Hello, I am Joanna Gamble, retired JSO. I started out as a safety education officer, transitioned to a DARE officer, and when they got rid of the DARE program, I transitioned to the school resource officer program, which I absolutely loved. I started out at Paxton Middle as SRO before it became the school that it is now.
School for Advanced Studies.
There we go. And then I moved over to Sandalwood High School and absolutely loved it. Loved the SYIP program as well. And I think
Quick
that's
question.
it.
When
Yes,
you were
ma'am.
at Sandalwood, how many students were there?
About 3,200. Sandalwood was the largest school in the county, had the highest number of students every year.
And how many of you all were there? Officers? 2 officers.
2.
3,200 students.
Yes.
Wow. Interesting.
Yes.
Good morning. This is going to take a while. My name is Sabrina Connor DeLong Parrish. Either way, however they know me. I was at Raines High School first. Then I moved to Gilbert, and where I did basically the whole years until they pulled us out the SRO program. And once I retired from JSO, I went back into the schools and I went to Northwestern. And after Northwestern, I was able to go to Thomas Jefferson Elementary School. And I am retired twice, one from JSO, Jacksonville Sheriff Office, and one from the School Board Police Office.
Now, before you pass the mic, I want to take a moment to acknowledge, honor, and recognize you, Officer Parrish, because you are probably one of the longest serving officers in the school system. How many years did you do as an SRO in total?
Total, I would say 25 years.
Wow. Amazing.
Yes, it is.
And not only did you do SRO work in Duval County, but you also did SRO work in Clay County. So
yes.
when I say thank you for your service, I truly mean thank you for your
Thank you.
service.
And all of the schools was very challenging.
Yeah.
All of them were inner city schools, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
Yeah.
And we'll
And
do
I
it
know
again.
that you still are in contact with many of your students and you have mentored them over the years.
Yes, I'm still in contact with a lot of my students. They are grown now, and one is sitting on the stage now.
Oh, we're going to get to you in a
And
minute, brother.
he is a police officer. A lot of my students are police officers. Some of them are police officers. Some of them are doctors. Some of them are doing well for themselves. And some of them have came up to me and say, hey, thank you. Not knowing that I was able to assist them in some ways, that just being me and just
Right.
being there to help them. And one young man came up to me and he said, I was at a Reigns and Reebok game, and he came up to me, he said, hey, I've been looking for you. And I'm like, and I stepped back and the other officers looked, and he said, you was my school resource officer at Reigns. He said, can I give you a hug? I said, sure. He said, don't ever change. He said, you saved my life.
Wow.
He said, you didn't know at the time I was contemplating killing myself.
Wow.
And you saw me in the hallway, you pulled me in your office and you talked to me. He said, the things that you told me, I still go by that today. He's about 40 years old now. He said, I instill that in my own children, and I use that in my life for whenever I'm down or whatever, to remember the things that you told me and uplifted me.
All right.
And I'm not a crybaby, but I was crying up there in front of all those people.
Yeah, it's a wonderful feeling to know that you've had that sort of an impact on a child.
My name is Chris White,
Don't start singing.
a.k.a. Mr. C. I started off SRO. When he started the program, I was at Jeb Stewart on the west side. And then from there, they asked me to go to the DARE program. And when I went to the DARE program, I went from there from 2000 to 2011 when they ended it. It was a very good experience. I had schools from the west side all the way out to the beaches. And like Officer Sabrina said, you just never know what life you're going to change. And we've touched and impacted so many different lives that we don't even know. And that's why we're there, to make a difference in kids' lives. And then from there, we went to, I did time with the school board, police. But overall, just working with the kids in general, our main purpose is to make a difference. Because sometimes when you meet a police officer, that's their first impact, their first interaction.
Right.
And when you make that first interaction, we don't want everybody to say, you know, I don't like the police, or I'm scared of the police. And when parents come and say, hey, take my child, teach him a lesson, don't do that.
Right.
Don't do that.
That's right. That's
So
right.
we're here to make a difference. I thank God for the experience and for what he has done. And one of the funniest things in my line when I was a DARE officer was I was teaching at a Mandarin elementary school. And we was teaching about drugs and drug abuse, and we was talking about marijuana and the plants and different things like that. And as I started talking about it, the little boy stepped up and said, hey, Officer Wyatt, my dad got a whole bunch of those plants in the back of our house. And I'm like, okay, and I can't, you just can't let it go. So I said, okay, I'll talk to you later about it. So that's one of the funniest things that happen. You just never know. He said, yeah, my dad got a whole bunch of those.
While you have the mic, introduce your little friend back there
Oh, my little friend.
you brought with you after all these years.
This is Darren, the Dare Lion. And Darren has made such an impact on kids' lives over the years that when I brought him into class, my main thing was to challenge the kids to do the right thing, make the right decision and right choices. And if they did that, they would get to hold Darren for the whole class time during our Dare series. And you would be amazed how hard those kids would try just to hold Darren for that one day. And when they couldn't hold him, They would start crying, this, that, and the other. I said, that's a lesson. You're not going to always win. You're not going to always get what you want. So you have to learn how to accept and make the right decisions. But Darren has changed a lot of different lives. I've had him now for almost 30 years. And Darren, thank you for your service.
Now, as we go on, you're going to pick up on these personalities, and you'll know who dealt with the elementary students, the middle school, and the grown folks. You'll figure it out as we go on.
Well, I'm Antonio Richardson, a.k.a. Lucci. Some even call me Officer Speedy. I had the privilege of serving as a school resource officer for more than 7 years. I worked at 3 middle schools, Northwestern Middle, Matthew Gilbert, and Landmark Middle School. In fact, I had the privilege of being one of Sabrina's students. No, I'm joking. I did follow Sabrina. When she left Matthew Gilbert, I followed her, and it was hard following her. She's a great officer, and it was we want Officer Connor back. We want Officer. Well, you got me. But I had the privilege of doing that, and I loved it so much that I even came back to the sheriff's office about 4 years ago after 21 years of being retired. So I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. And we're glad you came back. I was going to bring that up. That is absolutely amazing to me. And I know a lot of people watching may have saw your story on our local news station, WJXT, I believe it is, Channel 4, where they featured you and told the story about how you came back after all these years. Missed it. Do you have any desire to go back into a school?
I'm trying to get back into school now. To me, being a resource officer or being in the school or working with youth, it's not a job, it's a calling.
Yes.
Being a police officer is a calling. I came back because I needed to fulfill my calling. And I think that's why many of you all, even after you retired, went back into law enforcement, another field, because you cannot escape this calling.
That's right, because you can retire. There's nothing stopping you from retiring, but there's something that you feel that you still need to do. Chris?
I'm Chris Johnson. I was one of the first groups that got into came over as the DARE program, which I thought was an awesome program, and too bad that went away. What caused that? I think it was political, probably. But I never seen, they have not come up with anything else that I know of that can replace that program, and I believe in my heart that program touched a lot of lives. Now kids don't know which way to go, what to believe, especially with the marijuana being such a big issue, politically as well as everything else. And then I transitioned to the SRO program. I was at Stanton, then Ribault High. And from there, I went on to become one of the first officers that went to the whole Homeland Security program. But it has been an experience. I dream about it, but I don't miss it. There you go. I gave it my all when I did it. I love the patrol division as well. I think that was the real thing for me, because I really thought that I could make a difference when I came out the academy, being in patrol. Totally different situation from what police officers are doing now and what they are now. Just like Rev said, it's a calling. And the new hires now, I just do not, they look in the paper. They're recruited from colleges. They say, that sounds like a pretty good job. I think I'll apply for that. And lo and behold, they apply. They get hired. Been in private schools all their lives. Never been in a fight or an argument. and you put them at King's and Myrtle, and it's a future shop. They don't know what to do. They've never been put in those type of situations before. And it's just I think it's more of a financial money situation based a calling. I can remember what I got paid, what we were getting paid when we came on versus what they're getting paid now. It's unbelievable. It definitely was not because of the money that we took this job. It wasn't because of the money. But, you know, that's all I have to say about that. I pass the mic to my brother Cummins.
Hello. I'm retired twice officer Willie Cummings. Well, actually, I've been a student at all their schools. They've all been my SRO. On a serious note, I am officer retired twice, JSO and school board. Started in this business around 95, 96, and my primary reason at the time was to stay on my kids' schedule because an SRO pretty much was on a school schedule, and being that being the case, I was able to follow my kids through their life and their athletic after school type activity. So it worked out, but again, being in the schools, you starting out at Andrew Jackson, then moving on to Matthew Gilbert, Fort Caroline Middle, and then ending at Ribault High as an SRO, and then going into the school safe education part as being officer friendly, dealing more with the elementaries. Through those years of working, you've touched a lot of kids. You know, a lot of times, you know, the parents want you to be the bad guy, but you don't want, no ma'am, don't make me the bad guy. We want these kids to be able to come to us in their problems and feel comfortable with us and not look at us as the bad guy. And you have to remember, in a lot of cases, they see the patrol officer coming into their homes from time to time or in their neighborhoods as being and having to be the bad guy on different situations. But here in the school system, we were more of trying to touch them, showing that there are ways that they can solve their problems outside of violence. Did it for a lot of years. Also touched base a little with the Explore program, where kids explored law enforcement, followed behind, Officer Dixon, and then it was Officer Anderson, and of course I followed behind him, and we led those kids in a direction of wanting to be law enforcement, and did a lot of things for them. And just recently I was at Jason Deli, and a kid came up, knocked on my window. I was like, oh. And it was a past Explorer. Currently, he's with JSO and in the reserve. So, you touch people, hey, man, I wouldn't have made it without you, is a comment that we get a lot. They remember us. A lot of times, we don't remember them, but they remember us. And I would just like to end by saying, I'm a wonderful guy. I did a lot.
Good job.
Good job, Willie. Because I'm 64.
Speaking of the Explorer program.
She's not done with me.
Yes, I am. I was telling
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Officer Henley next to you is a product of the Explorer program. That's all I was going to say.
Oh, yeah, but he wasn't under.
Right.
Yeah, he would be the president if I had him. Good job.
My name is Richard Henley, and it is an honor to be amongst the elite of these SROs. And I was touched early with coming as a law enforcement in my career by Officer T.L. Brown and then Officer J.J. Dixon, who was over the Explorers program, where I was introduced by Officer T.L. Brown to explore this program while I was in school myself and coming up under her tutelage. And now to be in a place where I've been blessed now to actually supervise these same programs that I was a part of. So to be called, as Pastor Richardson, Bishop Richardson, Officer Richardson has definitely said, it is definitely a calling, and to work at Terry Parker, Andrew Jackson, North Shore, La Villa, and to end my career at Grand Park, it was definitely fulfilling. That I remember getting a notice that the SROs was going to transition from JSO to the school board, and how tears ran down many of our faces because we know the impact of this program. It was an honor to get a call one time from homicide, and one of the witnesses literally said she would not talk to anybody except for Officer Henley, who was my student at the school. And to receive that call says that she has some valuable information to help us identify the suspect, but the only person she'll speak with is you, because it was the trust building of being a part of these students' lives. So they realize it's not for the money. It is definitely for some of the ones who really wanted to have that goal of being the only graduate in a family to graduate from high school, and to actually have someone that was fatherless. Some of them were fatherless and motherless. And to look at you, and mainly for the most part, begin to call you mom, dad, auntie. And right now I still have a few of my students that literally recognize me as dad and recognize my mom and my wife as their mother. So it is an honor to definitely be a part of the elite, but to touch so many lives in this program and to understand the mythology of what this program meant to the young people and what it continued to mean for the new generation of SROs that's in these schools.
Thank you.
J.D. Harness, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here. I really am. I'm looking around, and a lot of the statements that have been made here previous, it's great people on the stage here. And I was blessed with, and still am, with the opportunity over the last 25 years to be a part of the school community. 1995 is when I first went in as a detective liaison with school board security at that time. And I had an opportunity to work with all of these that are on stage and many more while they were in their schools. And I was their biggest ally, because there were a lot of people who would say, and those school resource officers don't do anything. And I look at them and say, you couldn't do that job. It takes a special person. It really does. So I had an opportunity from 1995 up until inception of school police in about 2009 to work as a detective, assisting our school resource officers. And then I left in 2009, went back to the sheriff's office, retired in 2014 on a Friday, went right back to school police in 2014 on a Monday, and went to A. Philip Randolph for 2 years as a school resource officer, transitioned into a supervisor, and enjoyed that time as a sergeant. The last 6 years, I've had an opportunity as commander to be operationally over a great group of people that allowed me to, a lot of new officers, to work with them through field training, to let them know that this is a niche, that this is special, mentorship, the things that really mean a huge difference in not just being an officer, but being a school officer. And then the last 2 years, kind of full circle, I've been over recruitment and selection with school police department. So I'm going out to the academies and recruiting these officers who are coming in to be school police officers. Enjoy it, love what I do, and I wouldn't change anything. If I had an opportunity to do it again, I would. Okay.
What an amazing career. Congratulations, Lieutenant Harness.
All right. First off, being the baby of the group, right? You guys are the reason, and this is sincere from the bottom of my heart. You guys are the reason why I'm doing this. My name is Vincent Robinson, of course. I've been a SRO with the school board now for 5 years. I'm at Matthew Gilbert. Life is full circle. Officer Connors was my SRO
Raise your hand, girl.
at Matthew Gilbert. So the same school that I received the joy of wanting to do this, I'm back serving at that same school. Bishop, he don't even know I know him, but my family obviously is in law enforcement. So each one of you guys, I have special memories of, even as a child, seeing y'all in uniforms. Y'all don't even know it. So thank y'all. Really, sincerely, you guys are truly a blessing, and I'm glad that I was able to grow up seeing and watching you guys be the best so that I can try to be the best. Yeah, so I appreciate that.
Wonderful. So I know that I feel better, and I think I can say everyone else up here feels better knowing that we are leaving the schools in good hands. The schools in good hands. Thank you all for that introduction, and thank you for the work that you have done with the kids. Now, I'm going to start the conversation off with kind of a statement and a question. And I'm going to preface this by saying a conversation that I had previously with Sherry Shaw, Luke, some of you all may remember her from her time with JSO. She mentioned that when they first started to putting officers in schools, there was a lot of concern in the community because they thought that officers were being put in the schools basically to arrest our kids. Because most of the schools that they started off with were inner city or challenged schools. So that's what they thought. So I want to ask, not each of you individually, but you can chime in as you see fit. I want to ask you, when you, I don't know if you were recruited or if you volunteered to go to a school, if you were recruited or volunteered, but when you went to the school, was it your mission to stamp out crime and arrest as many kids as you could to keep the school safe, or was it your mission to develop some sort of a way to change the students who needed to be changed? I hope I'm phrasing this right. So anybody can chime in.
Can I start off on that one, please? So I remember when I first got my assignment at a school, and that first time I was called and I was informed I was going to Andrew Jackson, I was like, no, sir. No, I'm not going to Andrew Jackson. And when I got there, the first day of my assignment, I arrested 6 people. And I knew that this was not the reason that we were here. But I also knew the methodology of ensuring that all of the kids get a safe education. So it was one of those things that, I don't know if you guys remember, we had the MARSH program. And it was attacked because they said exactly what you were saying, that we were identifying. And it was mentoring at-risk students that it was named for. And so when I was there and I seen the arrest of what I was doing the first day, and it was definitely one of those polarizing things. And I knew that when I got there, we was having some problems, but what I did not know is when we made the arrest, how some of the students came and they were appreciative about it, because they felt now they were in a place where we now can perhaps get a safe education. And they knew they had someone there that loved the students, but at the same time had to be a disciplinary. One of those students that in the future that I arrested, and she now calls me dad to this day. And because it was not just about the arrest, it was when I seen was making the arrest, how do we make a change from this? And so when she was in the back seat of my car, I began to talk to her. Certain people may say minister, certain people may say mentor, whatever you want to do, but it was one of those things. And then I started a youth group called Sudden Impact. and she became my first president of it, a person that I arrested at the school on a felony. So it was not for us to come in to make arrests, even though we knew it was going to be a part of it. It was coming to make a change in the lives that they can have a safe education.
The thing about that is, even the parents begin to realize that we were not there to put them in jail. We were there to keep them out of jail. You know,
Chris, speaking to your mic.
They will make better decisions. You know, so I think the program began to grow on people's hearts and the way they started police in the school. And I think, you know, at most of the schools, that the parents became appreciative that we were there, you know, so, yeah.
It was difficult in the beginning. I came in the tail end of the first wave of SRO. This is before Duval County had their school system, had their own police department. I was coming tail end with Chris. And we went in schools, we had to change the whole culture of the school.
That's right.
We had to go in there with the mindset, we're there proactive and not reactive. So when you first got to the school, teachers, principals, they're looking for you, hey, this kid's doing this, put him in jail. We had to change the whole culture of that. We had to let them know this is not why we're here, even though we will have to enforce laws. It was critical that we introduced ourselves in a way that would let them know we're here proactively, not reactively. And so what we would do, we would have classes. We would go into the classroom. We would introduce ourselves. We would interact with the kids. It was not always we're here to put you in jail. Right. I am your friend. Right. Now, I have a job to do if you cross the line, right, but I am your friend. And we develop a rapport with those kids. Right. And thus you have the result and the product of that with the young man that's sitting there. We developed that rapport, and that began to slowly change the culture and the atmosphere of the schools, the mentality of the administration in the school. And I think that's how we began to introduce that. Plus, the officers that went into the system were hand selected. Right. Now, being an SRO was not a popular job. In fact, it was, you going to be a babysitter? Nobody really wanted the position. You had to have a passion for children. And they hand selected, they picked out, this was in the beginning, the tail end of McMillan, the beginning of Glover's administration. And there was a big word that everybody remembered that was in that era, and it was called community policing. And that word was, that was ingrained in every one of our hearts. And then we went into that. We were selected. We wanted the job. We went in, and that's the key. We wanted the job. Mm-hmm. We wanted it because we were called to do it. We were police officers, but we would see things on the street, and they identified you as an officer that was not just one that wanted to just do reactive, but you had a passion to see change. And change wasn't just putting somebody in chains, right, but change was being able to share something with them that would change their lives. And the officers that I had the privilege of working with, these great officers on the stage, they had that passion, and we changed the culture and set the stage.
But you know what, the piggyback on that, community policing, that was just putting a title or a tag on.
Right.
Yeah,
been doing it.
I agree.
When you was in patrol, everybody in the zone knew who Officer Chris was.
That's right.
That is, when you get out that car and walk through the project, and you talk to parents and that's community policing. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So they came and put a name on it, tagged a name on it for various reasons. But if you was doing your job, that was already there. You was already community policing.
That's why you selected. Because you was that officer. Everyone that was on the stage was that officer that people said, hey, I can go to Officer Richardson, I can go to Officer Connor, I can go to, they knew you were that type person. I had a car dealership some years ago, and I sold a guy a car. He came up to me, and he said, you don't remember me, do you? I said, no. He said, I just got out of prison. He said, because of you, I went to prison. He said, every day I read your name on the report. And I did 20 years. And so I'm looking at him, I wasn't a policeman. I'm like, okay, now what? So what up?
Yeah, are you really here to buy a
So
car?
you here for friend or foe? And he reached out his hand, he shook my hand and said, you know what? I appreciate you, because one thing about it, he said, I was wrong and you treated me fair. That's what this group brings. These were officers who cared about people, who treated them fairly. We did our job, but you treated people fairly, and people knew you were concerned about them. And that's why we became SROs.
And can I tell you the other end of that, just to piggyback on changing the culture? It wasn't just changing the culture with the students. We also had to change the culture with the teachers. Because
Oh, yeah.
when you can have a student come to you and say, Officer Gamble, I didn't do that, I promise you. Or Officer Gamble, I'm not being treated right. Or Officer Gamble, they're not accepting my homework or whatever, because we wore different hats, right? And so when you step in as the voice for one of those kids, they see the sincerity and they understand, hey, he or she has my back, or he or she is genuine when I don't have the support at home. And so that was the other part of changing the culture, being in the schools.
And I have something to say in reference to that. Like I said, I was at Raines High School, and then I was transferred to not Northwestern, but Gilbert. Matthew Gilbert. And the reason why I was transferred is because I wouldn't arrest so many people. One of the principals asked me to arrest a student for smelling like marijuana. And I say, no, we're not doing that. We were not going to do things that was, wasn't right. And the kids, like Joanne say, the kids saw that. The kids saw that you stood up for them. You had their back. You was like a mother, and you was like, hey, I'm going to protect this child. I'm not going to let them treat them wrong, and I'm going to, stand up for what's right, because these parents, I'm not the parents, but the teachers and the administrators feel like the kids didn't have a voice. So when you have got a person who have a voice for them, therefore they look down on that person, which, was the officer. So they not only moved me, they moved the whole squad. So to make it look like the whole, they just wasn't just moving me. So when I got over to Gilbert, it basically was a challenge as well, because they told me I was going to Gilbert. I got there about 6:45. All I see is graffiti wrote on the, the school, all over the school. And I called my sergeant and said, are you sure this is school? Because he's like, it's less active than your school. Come to find out it wasn't. Okay, we had the east side of Jacksonville, Florida. We had gangbangers. We had all kind of things going on. I was doing like 5 or 6 reports at one time, and then and still handling things that was occurring at that same time. So it's like you're wearing so many hats, but you're fighting to protect these kids, and you're fighting adults who should know better, and not, taking the time out to see what's wrong with this child. Not taking the time out to get that child who's cutting up in class and say, wait a minute, let's pull him aside.
See what's happening.
I pulled one child aside, and he was older than the regular kids. And I pulled him aside, and I said, come in my office. He started talking. He was talking as we was walking to my to my office. And I say, don't say a word. We walked silently to my office. He sat down in my office and started boo-hoo crying like I had beat him. I said, what's going on? He said, I've been homeless for 3 months. Wow. He said, my mama put me out and said that she didn't love me. It was during the time that school had just enrolled. He enrolled himself. How he done that, I don't know. But I made contact with a family member. His family member came and didn't know what was going on, came and got him. The boy started, they put him in a skip program. He started doing so well. He ended up going to Raines High School after, because at that time, I was at Northwestern after I retired. I was at Northwestern. No, I'm sorry, I was at Gilbert. And the parents didn't want him. And for a child to come to school and knowing that their parents put them out in distance, that child wanted something in life. And that's what these teachers didn't see. They didn't want to see. You know, they didn't want to see, and then for us to come and stand up for that child, it's like, oh, you did the worst thing in the world. But the thing is, like I said, when I put on that uniform, I already had integrity. I already had honesty. I already had everything that we took an oath for.
Absolutely.
I just had the uniform on. I made that uniform do what it's supposed to do.
All right now.
I just wanted to add something to that, and to piggyback on what a bunch of you had said, the relationship that we established with the children and the community. As a DARE officer, you know, I would go into the classes, and we had a DARE box, and it was an opportunity for the children to ask us anything that they wanted, any questions about the program or anything like that. In the DARE box, I had children drop notes telling me that they were being sexually abused at home, and I had to open cases on that. I had children who were being physically abused at home, you know, and there was one student that I remember particularly. I started out with her at R.L. Brown Elementary. She was one of my DARE students, and I taught there for a couple of years, and she had graduated and went across the street to with Matthew Gilbert, right? And I saw her one day, and I looked at her. I said, wow, she's gaining weight, you know, but I started looking at her again. I said, but it's only in her belly. I said, we're talking about a 7th grader, you know, so I pulled her over. I said, sweetie, come here, talk to me. And she talked, and she talked. Officer, at the time, it's Officer Tootin, you know, she got real shy. I said, come on now, you know who I am. I said, what's going on? She said, I'm pregnant. I said, yeah. I mean, I almost, you know, I wanted to cry, you know, but I had to hold it together. She was pregnant. Come to find out, her mother was pimping her out.
Yes.
I mean, so, you know, for drugs. So the community, I mean, they saw us as DARE officers, but they had no idea, or SRs, they had no idea of the hats that we wore in those schools. You know, and it was everlasting, and it's still affecting people to this day.
And you know, going back to what you were saying about relationships, it's so important, because when I was at Jeb Stewart, and I had a case almost like yours, Officer Stewart, we had these females that always loved to fight because you had the West Side. And they bring the neighborhood scraps into the schools. And when you start getting a relationship, then you always had that third person that want to get the other two fighting. We real quick had this one young lady, she gained a relationship with her. And she left class unexcused because they wouldn't let her go. She said, I need to talk to Officer Wyatt, I need to talk to Officer Wyatt. The teachers wouldn't let her go. So she said, I need to talk to Officer Wyatt. So she got out from the school and came to my office. I said, girl, what you doing out of class? She said, Officer Wyatt, I got to talk to you. She said, I'm telling you, Shanita want to fight, but I don't want to fight, Officer Wyatt. I don't want to fight. That's why I'm coming to you, because I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. I said, oh, okay, so calm down, what's going on? She said, well, see, I don't remember the kid's name, but she said something like, you know, Danita, whatever, keep on saying, I want to fight her, and I don't want to fight her, and it's going to be a big thing if I do go in there, da-da-da-da-da. I said, well, who said that? She said, well, Lillian said that she told so. I said, okay, let's stop. Went to the office. I said, listen, I need these students out of class. I need them to come talk to me. I got all 3 of them in my little office. Set them down. Okay, let's get this straight. Who said who wanted to fight? Officer White. I didn't say I wanted to fight her. I didn't say I don't want to fight her. What did you say? Did you tell her? Well, I might have said something. So you said it's this third person, and I got them to see that it's not always. Don't go by what you know what you hear and see. Get to the straight stuff. I said, see, y'all's gonna fight each other over this person right here, over what she was starting. And then like what you were saying, I had a young lady at Eugene Butler. About the same thing. She was missing a lot of school. Come to find out, the same thing. Her mother was pimping her out for drugs, and your heart just drops. And a lot of times, even the teachers don't know what these kids be going through when they leave. And matter of fact, school sometimes is a safe place for them. And when you find out that they're going through all this stuff, and some of them, the only meal they get, if they get a meal at school, that's it. Yes. And just like getting put out of the house, and everything, it's sad. That's why they need people like us still in the schools.
I like what you said, Officer Bishop Richardson. The word that you used, the term was a calling, and it truly was a calling. And I'm just listening to the different stories and thinking about my own stories and realizing that it truly was a calling. And to be honest with you, if I had a pie chart and I had to separate it by how much time I spent with my police hat on versus how much time I spent with all my other hats on, it wouldn't be even. It would not be even. I did police work, but I didn't spend a lot of time, as much time doing police work as I did counseling, mentoring, even dealing with family matters, contacting DCF and all of these other things. So I appreciate that term, calling. I wish that Officer Green had come back, because when I spoke with him before, he talked about how some of the officers in the schools were making quite a few arrests. And he would say to them, are you actually talking to the children and finding out why they're doing what they're doing, as opposed to just making the arrest? And when he began to pose that question to them, those ones that were affected by it, and they went back and took inventory on what they were doing, they did find out that most of the kids that they arrested, not all of them, but most of them had underlying issues that were not addressed. And if we were able to address some of the underlying issues, then you didn't have to do so much policing in the schools. And I also want to just say that, in all fairness to the teachers, back then in the 90s, you had kids on top of kids on top of kids in classrooms. The classroom size was just astronomical. And I think the teachers were overwhelmed, and perhaps I would venture to say maybe not as equipped as we were to deal with all that stuff, because they were educators. We were law enforcement officers, so we had experience dealing with all these other areas. And I think that's why a lot of times things fell on us as opposed to falling on someone else. Did you have something you want to say, T.I.?
Wanted to add on to what everybody said, because, when I came on, all these officers here were already seasoned, and I was a new guy.
And now you're seasoned.
And I'm retired too now. So like Henry was saying, we looked up to you guys. You guys taught us. I know I was on patrol for a while. I got a chance to work with Chris on one. And everybody else touched me in one kind of way or another. Then I ended up going to the HUD unit. Well, the HUD unit, we got voluntold. I know I was voluntold to go to several schools, so I couldn't even remember all of them that I went to. But in going, I remember they said, well, you got to give the gab, you know how to talk to kids. So I'm like, what? So one of the schools, when I finally ended up going to Rains at the very end, and I was like, I'm going where? And I thought I had been punished because I didn't know everything that SROs did. I felt that I didn't know enough. When we saw you guys, we would see you for a few minutes, help with what we could help at. I know I saw Sabrina at Northwestern all the time, going to Rains, going to Reebok with that guy back there. Even going to Sandalwood so many times with Joanna out there. And then I got picked. And I had to learn it was different. It wasn't the regular police officer. Like Lou said, you end up becoming a counselor. You end up becoming somebody that they can trust, and you had to build that up. I remember my first day going, Oscar Harris was there. And I'm coming to school shaking my head. I was looking like Henry when he was talking about APR. I'm coming in, I'm like, what did I do? What did I do? Who did I make mad? First day it was a fight.
I recommended you.
I probably believe that.
But can I ask you a quick question, T.I., in reference to the HUD unit, the housing unit? I'm sure that at some of these schools you went to, they were the same children that you were dealing with in the housing unit. Purpose for having officers in the housing unit.
Correct. When we had the Jacksonville Housing Authority unit, the same kids in the schools were the same ones we see after school. So when I was at the school during the week, on the weekends if we worked, I'd see those same kids. And it was a little bit special to me because you can see what was going on at home. And we saw a lot of the stuff that when we were a school resource officer, we hear about it in the school, but I actually got to see the actual home that they were in. And you almost became upset with some of the parents because they act like they didn't care. They didn't know what was going on. It was like their child had a whole different attitude. And whether that attitude at school was because of fear from what's going on at home, or because they had to be big and bad and bold at school to show a different personality, we had to find a bridge point in between that. And when we talk about changing the culture of the teachers, the coaches of the students, the coaches of the parents, what they expected of us, we had to change that culture also with other officers. Because when they showed up to schools, they were like, hut, we gonna make some arrests. No, we gonna go figure out what's going on first.
Listen, you couldn't come to my school as a police officer and do whatever you wanted to do.
Correct.
Because you're not going to disrupt what we have established there in protocol, because you get very protective
Of your
of
kids.
your
Of your
kids, because they're not just your students, they become your
Part of you.
babies.
Your family.
Even to this day, I call my kids my babies. His daughter is my baby, right? Because she was at Sandalwood. And so there is nothing that I would not do to this day for my kids. I had a kid call me last year, towards the middle of the year. He said, Officer Gamble, and he actually calls me mom, because right before I got to Sandalwood, his mom passed. He was a star football athlete over there. And he called me and he said, Officer Gamble, I have some information and I just got to get it off my chest. He had information on a homicide. Gave that to me, but did not want to talk to the homicide officer because he didn't trust the other police officers. But I made that phone call to that detective and I said, hey, I've got somebody that has information and he needs to talk to you. He needs to pass that to you. And because of my relationship with him from way back when, he gave that information. The arrest was made and the guy has since been convicted of it. And so those are the type, relationships that you have with your kids, and you want to be very protective when somebody else comes in saying they're coming in with, okay, we're going to come in with handcuffs out and we're putting everybody in jail and we're going to arrest now and ask questions later. You couldn't do that.
And you will lose the trust of the kids if you
Absolutely.
allow that to happen, because then they won't see you as their protector.
Absolutely.
And I want to add on that protective term. It's like you take it personal.
You do.
Your school, even the small percentage of kids that you have to deal with on a negative basis, on a daily basis, because
That's my negative.
it's a fact. You got kids that
That's my
come to
negative.
school not to learn for whatever reason. You have kids that come to school to cause problems for whatever reason, be it neighborhood coming into the school. We've dealt with that so many times. But you say, how can I, in some cases, not arrest this kid? You're trying to take a different route. And, state attorney helps with the notice to appears and the civil citations and things such as that. But again, when you said when other officers have to come into your school, it's like, hey, look, we got it under control, but for the moment, just calm down.
Stand by.
And let us do what we do, and again, fighting through the administration as far as, I want that kid arrested. I can't put him in jail for cursing you. I mean, that's just part of his nature now. He uses profanity, but that's not against the law to use profanity. That's why we have the student code of conduct, and you deal with that. But I kind of sit here and I look at from 95, 96, when I started this school resource, to 2025, and starting out, we had to sometime be the police, but I look at that, I got to be the police. I don't have no choice. And how I ended my career with the kids at elementary school, I walk into the cafeteria. I trained them to the point, and some of you may know, I trained them to the point, when I walk into the cafeteria, they yell out, "The champ is here! The champ is here!" And that's a fact. Yeah.
Poor babies.
Yeah. And you're talking elementary, 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, but they look forward to my
There's a method
antics.
to the madness.
Yeah, I sing to them, happy, all the little kid songs. But I say all that to say the police, and we're kind of going in a different direction now of taking the police out of the school, certain ages, meaning elementary, but that's how you get them early. You get them early. So once they get 16, 17, it's a difference.
It's a different.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I have the privilege of coming back to the sheriff office 21 years later. So I feel like Rip Van Winkle, I woke up and it's a whole nother culture now. It's a whole nother mindset. I had to go through the academy and everything again. I'm seeing a different police department than what I left. I mean, honestly, I really miss working with officers like you all. Not to say that the guys that I work with now, the girls I work with now are not good, because they're sharper than, than I think we were, book-wise. My question is, and I'm asking especially you, Sergeant Henry, do we still have officers with that same passion that these officers had? Did somewhere down the line, did we lose it? Were we able to share that with other officers? Did they pick up that same enthusiasm and drive that we have? Or is it to them? Do y'all see it to them?
Still here. The biggest thing, the biggest response to that is like what you guys said. Relationships and rapport is the biggest thing. Like I've heard during so many trainings, all of the gadgets and all of this stuff is cool, but your biggest tool is your mouth and your heart, right? So if you lead with those two things, it breaks the barriers of so many things, because we have so many kids, right? It can be something as simple as they hadn't ate in 2 days, right? That can cause a whole lot of friction just from not eating. I mean, we're all grown. We know if we go 3 hours without eating, we're ready to start a war. So it can be something as simple as that. But as far as the passion, it's still there. But picking back off of, I call it all of y'all OGs, picking off what OG said earlier, my crew, my generation, my peers, we're right out of college, right? We didn't have that. We didn't get roughed up enough. We didn't see certain things. We just want to just get out there and fight crime, where we don't realize that it starts with your heart and your mouth. That's where it starts at. That will break the barrier for a lot of things, and my peers don't understand that. We just want to kick doors and, get right to it. Where if you just be compassionate, have empathy, you would be surprised, man, how that will allow the police job to be easy.
Hold that thought. Do you all have the freedom that we had? And I'm giving you an example. I would, and I'm sure these officers did the same thing, we would literally take kids after school. We didn't put in for overtime or nothing like that. We would take them to lunch. We would go make home visits. They would call us dad and mama. We had a certain freedom without the fear of there being some type of retribution or some charge being put on you. We had that freedom, and I don't know, because of the political climate, that you all have that same freedom to take kids out without being, and I don't even know if some of the officers now, if they should do something like that. Because, I don't take care of my wife. I said, what you doing? I got about 5 kids coming to the house. Hey, we can't do that anymore. So I know y'all can't do that now. So is that some type of restriction?
There are, and it is different. Let me speak on transition. So going back 2014, when I left the sheriff's office and came over school police, probably 70% of the 55 officers with school police at that time were those that were school resource officers with JSO and came over. It was easy then, all right? It was easy all the way up until about 2018. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. At that point, pretty much everybody, because school police had moved in about 2008, 2009, those who were school resource officers who weren't already with school police had already retired and gone to do something else or retired. 2018, we had many of you all who are right here on the panel who were now retired from JSO, were the foundation of the current school police department. But that same year, it was mandated that all 150 schools in Duval County not only have a police officer or an armed agent, but bell to bell. Taking your point of, do you spend that extra time with them? These guys can't leave the school. They got to be at the school from the start of school to the end of the school. And so there are limitations there. Now, that was one thing, was we had to go from 55 officers to, I think we have 125 officers now. We have about 45 guardians that, that now make up the school police. The actual sworn officers doubled, almost tripled in size because it had to. Where'd those numbers come from? A lot. We do have several. They weren't the SROs from JSO because those are no longer in play now. What they are now is those community policing officers, those good beat officers who worked with the community. They came over, and I could name several that have been hired since, in the last 5 or 6 years that work with us now. That they were never an SRO with JSO, but they were good officers. And now they're good officers and good school officers in our schools. Secondary is somebody like Robinson here, who was a guardian, a school safety assistant, was around family of police, had good environment, a product of a lot of you all in here, right, good mentors, and put himself through the academy. He's now been an officer with us for over 5 years, but he's one of our FTOs. He's one of the ones out there that are making a difference with these guys that are straight out of the academy that didn't have what you all were able to give.
So you're saying now that there's a paradigm shift that's taking place.
A huge.
With
Yes.
active shooter. I had to attend a class yesterday, active shooter. Now that it's more school, now you have to really be reactive as well as proactive, but more with the current situation. Would you say you have to be more reactive now as a
You
officer
definitely do,
than
and there still
proactive?
is a lot of proactive in there, but nowhere near what you all were able to do as a group, however many years ago. Things have changed so much now, and what their abilities are, the paperwork, the amount of documentation since 2018, things y'all never heard of, except for unless you've been with this last.
So we've
5 years.
lost, these officers here would be considered obsolete in terms of the way we did it back then. And that's what I'm saying.
No.
I mean, if I had to go back into school now, the way we did it, and I'm back in, it is obsolete. I hate to use the word, but it's obsolete now. There's so many changes.
Because
so how then, what's different, just briefly, what's different now in the school?
A lot of paperwork. Administratively, they've got to document every time there's a fight in school. They've got to, there's many more reports written now than that didn't have to be written then.
Right.
So it takes that time away from being proactive.
I don't think, the officer is going to change.
Yeah.
The officer shouldn't change who they are.
Exactly.
It's the system change.
Exactly.
So
kids are still the
it's
same.
about us being a community as officers, and also being a, just being there for the kids that we know that needs help, and also, just not doing what the system wants you to do, but do what's right.
The message don't change, but the methodology does.
Yes. And the thing is, I've always told the kids, even my own child, treat people like you want to be treated. You gotta, sometimes teach the parents that, because the parents don't know. You gotta get that rapport with the parents as well as the children. One thing that helped me at Northwestern Middle School when I went back after I retired from JSO, my parents were my students, and my parents knew who I was when they were my students. So they was comfortable to say, hey, I'm glad you're here with my child, because they know that rapport we had when they were a child, when I was their officer. It's one young man went home and complained on me. My name had changed. The parent came up to the office, I want to see the officer. I walked through the door, the parent say, "Oh, no," and I thought I was getting ready to have a problem there, and she's like, "Oh, no, I don't know what y'all call her, but that's Officer Connor there." And she told her son, she said, "If you don't take your so-and-so back to class, whatever she tell you to do, you do." So it's not, the system changed, but the officer shouldn't, because that person was grown already, that the parent was grown, and I had them when they was child. So they knew that I didn't change from that time to the present time.
False.
I just wanted to say that with all the rules and regulations, paperwork, writing, it's just like we talked about. We got into the school system when the children were young. We have to do the same thing with policing. We have to get in there when the recruits are still in the academy and change the culture. Because when I was at the academy for 7 years, and when I was there, I told my recruits, first of all, you got big shoes to fill. I rarely brag, rarely, but I knew the quality of the officers that I work with. I said, you have big shoes to fill. It's a lot of responsibility. When you leave this academy, I'm going to give you everything you need to fill those shoes. I said, but the second mentality you have to remember is that we are servants. I said, we serve the public. I said, and that's one thing that you get out there, you get that badge and that gun and that uniform and that car, and you want to showboat. I said, but you got to remember, you're out there for these people. I said, you're their protectors, and that's the attitude that we have to have. And so I believe that part of the change is to get back into the academy and teach these officers that we are public servants. We are here to serve the public. We are here to protect them, and we have to change the culture in the academy. I taught human diversity. That was my specialty. Because and I'm originally not even from Jacksonville, but the neighborhood that I grew up in was very similar. I grew up in Gary, Indiana. We had a black mayor in the 60s or the 70s. So I grew up in a culture where, it was very diverse. And so, coming here and teaching my recruits, I let them know that, look, people are people. I don't care what skin color, what economical status you're in, people are people. And so I believe that's one of the roots of the problem is we have to get into the academy and teach these recruits that, hey, you are the servants of the public.
And to piggyback off one quick second, to piggyback off what the Chief Harness said. He know why I said
You're ready, you have a job.
It's time. A lot of now you mentioned the reports and all of the paperwork that's needed as officers freshly coming out of the school system, Duval County. It's the lack of time of being able to have that ability to move around the school and deal with the kids on a positive note, because you're constantly sometime bogged down with the reporting side of it. Yeah.
I just wanted to throw in there that society has changed a lot too. We have to remember when we were in the schools, there wasn't all of this access to social media and cameras everywhere.
Good point.
At one point when we were in the schools, paddling was a thing. I know that it's definitely not now, but that was a thing, and that kind of made the kids kind of tighten up a little bit when you talked about that. We have a special story about that, don't we, Officer Collins? My nephew was a student at her school, and she was getting on him. He said, "My auntie is the police." She said, "Who is your aunt?" And when he told her, she called me. He was acting up, y'all. I told her to put the school phone on speaker and tear him up. That was the last time he pulled that stunt, but paddling was a thing. I'm not saying she did it, but back then. And so society has just changed so much with, not just with the police culture, but just in general with what you can and cannot do without facing some sort of, litigation or something like that. So all of those things play a part, but I'm grateful for us coming through in the time that we did and being able to make the impact that we made. I know we have to wrap it up, so there were a couple of other quick topics that I wanted to touch on. Programs. I wanted to say that for the majority of the SROs, when they were sent to the schools, they were not sent there with a blueprint. And so they took their community and they made their community their own. So I just wanted to ask, Ricky Stanford's not here, y'all. Ricky Stanford, we call him Pretty Ricky. I hope he gets to see this. He had a $1 bill with his picture on it. And when the kids did something positive, he would give them one of his bucks, and they could go to the cafeteria and buy things. Yeah, that's awesome. So I just want to hear some of the real quick, some of the programs that you all did. I had a couple of programs in my school, but the main program that I had, it was a girls program, and at the culmination of it, we would do a big father-daughter dance with the ball gowns and all that kind of stuff. And I'll probably try to tag some pictures if I can, but it was amazing. And some of the girls that did not have fathers were provided mentors, and it was just truly amazing. And so I'm proud of the work that I was able to do in my school with programs. What did you all do?
Well, let me say mine real quick because I have to be working in a few
Yeah,
minutes.
you do. I'm sorry.
We had a program at Northwestern called Operation Turnaround. What we would do is identify all of the troubled teens and bring them into a setting.
What was the principal's name?
Teresa Hodge.
Hodge. I had Perry and Jerry Thomas in talking about the Shoot Baskets Not Brothers program, and they mentioned that program.
Yeah, Teresa Hodge really was the founder of what they call the after-school program,
They said that.
and they stole it from her. Really, they stole that program from her. But we had Operation Turnaround. We would do things with the kids. I would personally start. We had double Dutch teams where I would go to the PAL and we would go all over the state with girls double Dutching, and we had softball teams, and we had different things we would do to make the kids, because they could not participate in school activities because of grades or because they were too old. So we created an atmosphere to make them feel special. That program, Operation Turnaround, turned a lot of kids around, in my opinion. And that was one of the programs that we kind of put our signature on. I say ours, she put her signature on.
I'm so
I
glad you
followed.
brought that up, because they brought it up, but we didn't go into any detail. And Ms. Hodge, if you're out there,
Yes.
if you're out there, thank you for what you did, and your name continues to come up, so we appreciate your service to the kids in our city.
So one of the things that we brought forth also with Andrew Jackson.
Thank you, Mike.
One of the things that we brought also was Andrew Jackson that I had said earlier was sudden impact, which is something that was definitely touching me, but it was to help kids to understand that, to get them into higher learning, to let them get acclimated, because we definitely see the transition of our workforce that at one time it was you can go to school and you can take a trade course where you had you can go to auto mechanic, you can go to wood shop, and they start getting rid of those things because our culture began to move more to higher education. And even with the police force, we seen at one time that if you had the passion for people, that you can apply for the job, but then it started moving towards higher education, so you had to get a degree. So we began to see that, and it actually started when I was with Mr. Poole, who was over at Terry Parker, and Miss Vanessa Richard at Terry Parker. We began to invest in young people, and it was one of those things that I decided to also bring that to Jackson and give it a name and call it Sudden Impact, because I know we're suddenly impacting these young people's lives. And now it's become now my ministry of Sudden Impact. And where you take these kids and we traveled for a week that these kids know how to pay one dime. We taught them how to live in a hotel. Well, not live, how to stay in a hotel. How to have respect for the next room and the room that was above and beneath. Then how to carry themselves when they walk on a college ground, college setting, on a collegiate level, to begin to put them in the mentality of having these, because a lot of us came from families where college was new to us. And we did not have it. So it was a thing of, once again, you beginning to see the paradigm shift. And when we begin to see it, we begin to actually seize those moments and to introduce them to the collegiate level, that they can now be prepared to advance themselves. So that was one of the programs that I actually brought to Andrew Jackson, but it was a grassroots that actually started at Terry Parker.
And one of the programs we started was actually when I left the schools, and I had brought this thing to Joe Stelma. And Joe and I, worked together, and we kind of cooperated on the juvenile drug court. And that's where I was one of the first officers to mentor at risk, especially black males, that was at risk of going to jail and, to turn their life around. And one of the success stories that we had, that I had to give God the glory, was for the Mad Dad, his son. He was going through some little things, mentoring him and kept on in his life. And to this day, we still keep in contact with each other. And he went to the Navy, became a chief, this, that, and the other. But like Mr. Henley was saying, because of the relationship, he was able to turn himself around because of the program.
Anybody else? Well, I know you had the big fashion show every year. Everything you do is just way over the top. And I know that some of those students from all those years at Matthew Gilbert, I'm sure they will stumble upon this video. And that fashion show.
Yes,
She had people driving in on motorcycles.
It started off with the project manager for communities and schools, and I suppose I'd been assisting him. And he left me hanging. So I didn't want to disappoint the kids, and majority of those kids were at-risk kids. And in order for them to be in the group, their grades had to be up to par. They didn't have to be up to par right then and there, but they had to work on making their grades better, which all of them did. Their behavior came better. The teacher was like, "What are you doing?" Letting them be a part. Letting them see that they are somebody, So when this fashion show started, different department stores, Navy, the formal wear, they gave me free clothes for these kids to just come and try on, name brand or whatever, and they trusted me, so they said, just don't take the tags off. So when those kids got on that stage with those clothes and they was presenting themselves very well, and they just felt proud. Their self-esteem went up, their grades went up. It was, every year it grew to where it was a standing room only. And the last show we had we had the teachers versus JSO, Jacksonville Sheriff Office. That's why the kids was changing into their formal attire. So these are my two models here. Yes, these are my two models. They really, they gave their time. A lot of the officers, they sponsored a child. They was there. The parents were so proud. One dad was in the audience and say he's never saw his child with a suit on. After one event, I had a stretch limousine waiting on the kids because they, had their formal attire on, and I set some arrangements with a restaurant here in Jacksonville, and they closed the restaurant down for the kids because they never had like a set down, dinner. So the kids, when they walked out, they saw the limo. They was real happy about that. But then we went to the restaurant. And two little guys about your size. They was I was walking behind them, and they didn't see me. And one little guy, he say, "This is the best time of my life. I never forget it." And my heart just went out to him because nobody, it was right across the bridge. They had never been over there. And they stayed right there on the other side of the bridge. And it meant your niece and your nephew, but because it ended up being the smart kids wanted to be involved because they saw the kids who, all the way, the ones who they looked up to because they was the whoever, and when they saw them, they saw the change in them, they wanted to be a part. And the positive took over the negative. And so that program, it was very successful, and they still want it, but I don't know about that.
But do you know why they did, or they performed the way they did, is because of you. And what you presented to the kids, and how you carried yourself, and how you dressed, because you dressed to the hills. You were that example for your students, and that is why they did what they did and why they enjoyed and why they made the change. It's because of your example.
So, thank you all for all of your programs and all of your work. We are getting ready to wrap it up, but I just wanted to give you all an opportunity, if you had any parting words that you wanted to say to the community, to any of the students, to just anything that you want to share really quickly. I wanted to give you an opportunity to do that. Anybody?
The only thing that I would like to add, in all my years, about 39 years and 11 months of being in a uniform, you really have to, and kids change, don't get me wrong, at an older age, but finishing my career at an elementary school, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, I can say that it's like you got to start early. You can't wait until a kid has formulated his demeanor, how he wants to be, who he wants to hang with. You gotta get them early. So, and I say all that to say, when I walk into the cafeteria, when I was at Don Brewer,
The champ is here.
the champ is here, and I programmed that. I programmed that in their
They're
heads.
impressionable. That is so true.
Very.
They are impressionable.
That's what I was trying to
Yeah,
say.
right,
That is it.
right.
Start
But Nita,
young.
JJ, I wanted to say the same thing what LaToya was saying, basically, add to it, because when I was at the middle school, and they had the police officers in the elementary schools, and they took them out, it was a big difference when they came from the elementary school to
That was
the
the DARE
middle
program,
school.
right?
Yes, and it was a big difference, and when they took those officers out, oh my God, you can tell the change. You can see the change.
And for me, the last thing that I want to say is, if you are working with children, please just be sincere, be genuine with them, because they can see through any facade you put up. And so it has to be a calling, it has to be something that's in your heart. And even if it means, I know you work from the time the school opens until the time the school closes, they have to be there. But a lot of times it takes after hours for you to do that job and be effective. So it doesn't just end when everybody goes home at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. So.
And I would say this is basically in closing also, that as officers, people, as parents, there's power in your words.
Yes.
Speak life, not death.
Yes.
You can do this. You can handle this.
Yes.
There's power in your words. Speak positive.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It truly starts at home, and if they put that positivity into them and send them to school to people like us, can you imagine what we can do? 2 things I want to say in closing. One, I want to acknowledge that today we're here celebrating Black History Month, and so we chose to spend some time with some of our former African American officers who worked with the students. But I also wanted to acknowledge that we had an awful lot of good school resource officers who were not African American officers. And I wanted to give a shout out to them, because they worked so closely with us and they helped us to make such a difference in the lives of so many kids that we did not want to leave them out today. So I have a few names in mind, but I'm not going to call them because I don't want to get in trouble with anybody else. But I just wanted to acknowledge that there was just a group of like-minded individuals who came into those schools and who helped work with the kids. And then the last thing I want to say in closing is, I know that all of us in our schools had memories, be they good, bad, or indifferent. And when I think about my 10 years at one particular school and 3 at another, I always think about the students that we lost. I always think about the students that we lost. At my school, I had one that was murdered the night before school was supposed to start, anyway. And I had another one that went home during the Thanksgiving break, and their house caught a fire. Her grandmother, she got out, her grandmother was inside. She went back in to get her grandmother, and unfortunately, she did not make it. So I did not want us to leave here today without remembering those children who never got an opportunity to be adults. May their memories live on. May their families be comforted. And may we be comforted, because as you've heard so many times, they're just like our children, our family. And so to lose them in whatever way we lost them, we're humans, and it hurt, and it still hurts because we have those memories. So I didn't want to leave here today without acknowledging the students that we lost. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add?
Thank you for putting this together.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for being a part of this. Obviously couldn't have done it without you, but your stories, your testimonies, your words of advice, all of those things matter. And I'm also going to say that this will be aired on our YouTube channel. So if there are any questions, any comments, any of our students out there who might remember us, please, please, please comment, because we want to hear what you have to say. On that note,
Definitely comment and be prepared. We have a scholarship coming from the Brotherhood of Police.
That's right.
Go ahead and speak about the scholarship before you
You're the chairman.
So we're still doing the police officers that you see on this stage and others. We are still doing things for young people right now.
Right.
And one of them is the Anthony Rogers Scholarship, where we have designed a scholarship for 12th graders and first-year college students that they can apply with the Brotherhood of Police, the Anthony Rogers Scholarship. And these scholarships continue to help our young people. It does not matter background as far as race and ethnicity, but these scholarships continue to help young people thrive in school and to help them to go to the higher level of education. And because of these officers that's sitting up here and other officers that's not, we are actually putting in a fund that we do every year to ensure that these young people can higher their education through the Anthony Rogers Scholarship, which will be coming up on our Brotherhood page very, very soon.
Just one last comment at the direction of Sabrina. We just want to remember our fallen SROs
Yes,
that we have lost. We've lost quite a few
We have.
here recently, so.
Yes, we definitely want to recognize them. Bishop, can you come on up and close us out in prayer? You can do that. My co-host is coming back. You may not recognize him, but he's coming back. So we're going to...
You can come grab a regular microphone, Bishop.
And let me just say this, I want to do something that we haven't done in any other videos. I would like to ask Bishop Richardson if he would say a prayer over our children and our schools and the faculty and staff of the schools.
Let's pray. Oh, wise eternal God, we thank you for this day. This is a day that you've made, a day we will rejoice and be glad in. We thank you for this forum, for each one of these officers that have come out. We thank you for their service, their years of dedication, and for what they poured into our children. We realize now, God, that we live in critical times. In fact, you said in your word that in the last days, we're going to be in perilous times. We pray for our children right now, God, that you begin to deal with them, that you begin to instill principles in them, that you place other individuals, other officers around them that will continue with the legacy that these officers set. Let us not remove the landmark that's been established. I pray right now for the parents of these children. I pray for society. I pray for the culture. I pray that we're able to change that culture, God, day by day. I pray, God, that we continue to lift you up. And you say in your word, if we lift you up, that you will draw all men unto you. We thank you, God, for those officers that have served and have fallen, have gone on to be with you. We thank you for the time that we had with them, the legacy that they left. We will not forget them. God, I just pray right now in the name of Jesus that whatever we do, that we remember that we are servants first to this kingdom. It is in the matchless name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. And thank you all. That's a wrap. So tell us again, Officer Tootin, you were...
So I was Darren the Lion, and the only reason I got chosen is because I was skinny enough to get into at the time, to the costume.
Okay, so Darren the Lion was the
Dare mascot.
Mascot for Dare.
Resistance education.
Okay, and Officer Wyatt, how come you couldn't be the mascot?
Because I was too big for the. So I couldn't. Leave me alone.
Right, right. What you got there? What you got there?
Guess what I found?
What? Oh, your dick. Wow, look at you.
2000.
With all the dust on it. Wow.
Why you gotta, what's wrong with the dust? The dust makes it original. And then you talk about tippy toe. That's Gilbert tippy toe right there.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that, I should have.
Okay, this is Officer Connor. Y'all might remember her as Officer Parrish. And now this is a legend right here. You were at Matthew Gilbert forever, right?
Yes, yes.
And then where else did you go?
Before Matthew Gilbert, I was at Raines High School for 2 years, and after that, I was at Gilbert for 11 years.
Wow. And then after you retired from JSO and went to the school board, you went to, where'd you go after that?
To Northwest.
Northwest. And girl, you stayed in the jungle.
I stayed in the heat of things, okay? Very much so. But I loved it. I loved it.
She loved it and the kids loved her.
They was, and still do. We still keep in contact.
All right. Thank you. Good morning. How's everybody doing?
All right.
Hey.
You doing all right?
Oh,
What's up, man?
we supposed to start getting old like that.
Good. How about yourself? Hey. Bring up the drink. How are you? Good to see you. Hey, man.
And all everybody in church say amen. Hey, man, ain't got no yard. I ain't preaching today. We ain't got no yard to be cut. We are gathered here today to celebrate 200 years